Joining us now is Sean Spicer, former White House press secretary. Sean Spicer, thank you so much for joining us on Power Hour. It appears that some Democrats are using the case of alleged MS-13 gang member Kilmer Abrego Garcia to be some kind of hero. Maryland Senator Chris Van Hollen travelled to El Salvador to see Kilmer Abrego Garcia and to push for his release. It's not going his way, though. He wasn't able to visit him. But, you know, the mainstream media has just been fawning over this alleged criminal, describing him as a Maryland father. Border czar Tom Homan has blasted the Democrats and parts of the mainstream media for defending him.
I read a story about this. It's Maryland father, Maryland father. They don't mention he's a member of MS-13, who is a designated terrorist group, one of the most violent gangs in the world. They don't mention he's an MS-13 member. They don't mention he's an El Salvadoran citizen being held by the country of El Salvador. El Salvador makes that decision. Now the courts said we got to facilitate. We'll facilitate, but El Salvador has full authority on this. Again, a terrorist threat. Now if somehow he comes back and that happens, he's going to be detained and removed again. He's an MS-13 gang member based on our intelligence and El Salvador's intelligence. He will be detained and he will be deported. But what's the sense of bringing someone back to simply go and face deportation again? He's a public safety threat. He's a gang member and he's a designated terrorist. We should not be bringing any of those people back to the United States. That's my opinion.
Great to hear some common sense from Tom Homan there. But what do you make of Maryland Senator Chris Van Hollen travelling to El Salvador to try and visit this alleged criminal?
Gabriella, I think this is fascinating to me. I mean, look, here are the facts, just so we're clear, and I think Tom Homan did a good job of laying them out. This individual came into the United States illegally. Fact. No one disagrees with that. Fact. He was a member of a gang. In his court pleading, he says that he's concerned about going back to El Salvador because he is a member of a gang. So that was his pleading to the court. Fact, he has a deportation notice issued by a court in the United States saying he must go home. And final fact is he is a citizen of El Salvador. Yeah. I don't understand what Chris Van Hollen is doing, because he's basically going down saying, I want to rescue a gang member from another country to come back into the United States to potentially do harm. You played those clips over and over again. The idea that he is a Maryland man, that's like saying I'm an astronaut because I look at the moon and I mean, like, what makes him a Maryland man? He's not from Maryland. He happened to be in Maryland when he got arrested, but that makes me Australian because I visited there once and bought a pair of Uggs. That doesn't make me Australian. And I think that the media here is more sympathetic with a gang member from another country who has broken the law and been in the United States in order to be deported than they do with the thousands of victims who have faced the violent crimes from people in this country illegally. But the idea that a United States senator is going to another country to beg for a citizen of that country to come back to the United States really speaks volumes to their priorities. And this is a fight that President Trump will win every day of the week.
Absolutely. What does it say about the Democratic Party and what they really stand for? We heard from Patty Marin, whose daughter Rachel Marin was horrifically killed by an illegal immigrant from El Salvador in 2023, and she slammed Chris Van Hollen for his trip. You know, shouldn't the Democratic Party really be prioritising the American people and keeping them safe?
You know, if this election was about anything else last November here in the United States, it was about where the priorities of the country should be. The idea that we had open borders, we were allowing people just to come in. We were then giving them hotel rooms, cell phones, gift cards. It was insane. Donald Trump's restored order to this. And again, this gets back to the politics of this. The Democratic Party right now is siding with gang members. Those are not disputable facts. The guy allocated in court that he didn't want to return to El Salvador because he was a member of a gang. Not my words, not the government's words, his words. So the bottom line is, when members of Congress like Chris Van Hollen or Cory Booker of New Jersey start pleading, or Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, for them to come back, you have to question whether or not they are more worried about the rights of people breaking the law in this country than they are of citizens of this country.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Donald Trump has opened up about his first 100 days in office, which is fast approaching. We're up to day 87 of his second term. And the president says what he's most proud of is closing the border. And if you look at the numbers, they don't lie. In March last year, under Biden, daily border encounters were at 4,488. And for March this year, under Donald Trump, it's 264. I mean, how is he able to close the border so quickly, and what does it say about the previous administration?
It says two things to me. Number one, I had two senior officials on my podcast yesterday from the U.S. Customs and Border Patrol, and I asked them why. And there's two things that matter. Number one, under the 4 years of Joe Biden, the Border Patrol was not allowed to do their job. When you come into this country illegally, they were allowed to continue on. Like, they were given a notice knowing that they'd never show up. They were given the ability to go stay in the country legally, and in many cases given a hotel room. And so that stopped. That's number one, is that the Border Patrol was allowed to do their job. But more importantly is the signal that was sent. The Biden administration made it very clear, if you come to our border, you will be welcome. When Donald Trump came in, he made it very clear, the door is closed. We have a lawful way of entering this country, and you must go through that route to enter the country. And it took away the message that the cartels were sending people, which was all you need to do is get to the border. And it was true, by the way, and we'll let you in. So those two things really made a big difference. If you think about the lengths that people travel from South America to come to the United States, if you know that the door is ostensibly closed, you're not going to make that trek. But if you believed it was open, you might be willing to do so. And by making it very clear that not only will we not let you in, but if you do get in, we will send you back. Yeah. It has deterred a ton of people, and it's a very clear and unmistakable signal.
Absolutely. Look, I have to ask you about this top advisor to Pete Hegseth, Dan Caldwell. He's been placed on leave after being implicated during a leak investigation. He is, of course, a senior advisor in the Office of the Secretary of Defence, and it's unclear what material he's accused of leaking and to who, and it's not known whether Caldwell will face any criminal charges. But Sean Spicer, are you able to shed any light on this?
Well, look, to me, this speaks volumes. That gentleman, Mr. Caldwell, was a very close personal friend of Secretary Hegseth. They've known each other a long time. They were personal friends. And so when he was very publicly pushed out of the building, that sent a very strong signal to me that they were taking this very seriously. Obviously, they could have handled this very differently, quietly. And by doing it very publicly, that, to me, made it very clear that this was a serious breach, of which they at least had some inclination that there was a problem with this individual. Now, again, we're all innocent until proven guilty in America, but the public nature of this and the closeness and proximity of this individual and the relationship that he's enjoyed with Secretary Hegseth led me to believe that this was a very, very serious matter because, as I said, if they just suspected him or whatever, they could have easily, put him on leave without notice, but they made a public spectacle of this, I think, for a reason.
Okay. You with the president this week celebrating the US Naval Academy. Donald Trump welcomed Navy midshipmen football team to the White House to honour their 2024 season victory, presenting them with the prestigious Commander-in-Chief's trophy. We know that Donald Trump called them true American warriors during his speech, and he also highlighted the Navy's recruitment success, noting the highest recruitment numbers since 2002. Here is Donald Trump.
Take you down to the Oval Office because that is I'm going to do it.
Look, you can not deny that they absolutely love their president. Just looking at that clip, there must have been such a strong sense of pride in the White House.
Yeah, not only were we celebrating the Naval Academy's, Commander-in-Chief trophy, but I can tell you, having I was right next to him when he did that, these individuals, these young men and women, many of whom are headed off to start their military careers next year, it's not often that not only do you get to come to the White House and celebrate the victory, but as you saw in that clip that you just played, they were all escorted from there through the residence over into the Oval Office, and each one of them got a picture with the president. I got to tell you, he called several up on stage while he was talking. It was really a great, cool moment to be part of. I was honored. The president has named me to the Board of Visitors of the Naval Academy for the second time, once during his first term and now again. And for me, it was an honor to be present and part of that ceremony and then go visit the president in the Oval Office as well.
Oh, I love to hear it. I have to ask you, unfortunately, about Joe Biden because he's back from hiding. The 82-year-old delivered his first public address since leaving the Oval Office in Chicago this week. And look, my take on it, it was as weak as water. Despite the months that he's had off, he's still a rambling mess. His speech was still about attacking Donald Trump and Social Security. And at one point, he did what he always tends to do when he wants to make a point, and that is to start yelling.
But dignity, simple dignity. Everyone deserves to be treated with dignity, regardless of their standing, regardless of the economic situation, regardless of who they are. Making sure that more than 60 million Americans who are living with disabilities are treated with dignity is who we are as Americans.
Sean Spicer, what did you make of his speech?
So first of all, I want your audience to understand he got paid for that, by the way, a lot of money. Second of all, it was at like 5:30 in the afternoon, to which I can't believe anybody allowed that to happen. Third of all, it's a reminder as to why he pulled himself out of that race. If I were Joe Biden, respectfully, the man has served the country. Even as someone who disagrees with his policies, he should go quietly into the sunset. I think reminding people why you weren't with it as president and why you had to go off into the sunset is probably the best place to stay. You don't need to return to the limelight. As a Republican, I'm pleased. Look, I think he should go out every day. But I think that most Democrats are probably not happy to see him back on the stage. He rambled at a couple points. He told some crazy off-the-wall stories. I mean, it was just a reminder 5-6 months later why he wasn't able to run for re-election and why a lot of the last part of his term is going to be, frankly, questionable.
Yeah, and it was only 12 months ago that he was telling Americans that he was fit to serve again. And look, listening to him there, we all know that's certainly not true. So who will lead the Democrats in the future? According to the latest Economist YouGov poll, it's going to be Kamala Harris. The poll found that Kamala Harris is the politician, the top politician, I should say, among a list of 10 Democrats who are most likely going to be leading in the 2028 Democratic presidential primary, according to this poll, followed by Tim Walz, AOC, Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren. I mean, wow, what a group. Sean Spicer, what's your take on this poll? Do you have any free advice you could give the Democrats on how they could rebuild?
Oh, no. I'm very happy with that. I think that's phenomenal. Double down on stupid. I mean, the idea that she's got to, I mean, it speaks volumes to where their bench is. Look at where she stands, 20 points ahead of Pete Buttigieg on the most ideal candidate. Seriously, though, there's a book that just came out, Gabriella. I had the two authors called Fight. They were on my show last week, and it was amazing the stories that they tell in this book. Jonathan Allen of NBC News, Amy Parnas of The Hill. And the level of incompetence, mismanagement, lack of coordination in the Harris campaign. And yet she is the leading candidate among all of those other people that you put on the screen by 20 points. I think it's not just, I mean, if you think that was the best that your party can do, boy, does that speak volumes for where you are. But there's clearly no bench. There's no forward thinking. If I were a Republican right now, especially a J.D. Vance backer, because I think he will end up as the nominee, I'd be so excited that that's who you're potentially going to face.
Fair enough. Former White House Press Secretary Sean Spicer, thank you so much for joining us on Power Hour. Great to speak with you.
You bet. I hope you guys have a happy Easter.
Thank you. You too.